Welcome back to Ever Ancient, Ever New, the podcast in which we search for the hidden gems amongst the forgotten treasures of the church. I'm Father Kyle Kowalczyk, and I'm joined by a special guest, Kate Capato, a sacred artist, and visiting here in Delano. So glad to have you here.
Happy to be here, Father.
This is really awesome. So this is you're here. You're friends with one of our teachers, Ellie Jensen, who said, "Hey, one of my friends is going to be in town, and can we?" I'm like, "Shoot!" This is, I mean, like to me, to have an artist here who's going to be able to give us a talk, and I was like, "Well, if I can get her on the podcast, then for sure."
Yeah.
Because I think that this is just to me, it's a special place in my heart. I think when normal people say, "Are you an artist?" I think normally people think of painting, right? Would you agree with that?
Yeah, I think so.
But I'm an artist. I'm a writer. That's an artist. But we usually don't say that. We usually it's like it's a paint. So, but an artist, I think what we have here in Delano in particular, we have a beautiful church that was put together artistically, and there's great art in it for this tiny little farm town.
Yes,
it's actually pretty amazing. The architecture, the painting, the whole everything. But I think a lot of it's missed on us. I think maybe modern man in general is kind of we've lost the understanding of art. So here, a real live artist. What's it like?
What's it like? Great question. I mean, so I'm from the Philly area and been doing this full time since 2018, maybe. Dabbled in it a lot prior to that, but full time as a professional artist doing commission work for churches or schools or private commissions and things like that. And I like to equate it to walking on water in terms of like mission life. It definitely is mission because we're bringing, as a sacred artist anyways, we're striving to bring the teachings of our faith and the love of God through the visuals.
Yeah.
And anything we really do in the church, I'm sure you can relate, Father, it requires a lot of trust, and you don't always know where things are going to come together and how, but every time we say yes, they do. And the Lord constantly proves his faithfulness, and I'm always witnessing little and big miracles, and it's just really, it's an adventure, a beautiful adventure. It's definitely filled with a lot of trials and challenges, and there's a part where my whole family's involved with what we're doing this evening, like the mission component of coming with the art, and my husband's a musician, so an artist in a different way too, and we collaborate with our talents to bring God through beauty, like the whole umbrella of beauty there. And it's a joy, and it's a lot of learning how to surrender and let the Lord be our main leader and guiding us where to go next and what to create next and so on. So
yeah. Now I'm gonna make a confession here. When I was planning on this, I'm like, okay, so I'm gonna have this. Kate Capato, she's an artist. She's going to be, at the studio here in the rectory. And I'm like, oh no, she's going to think my art sucks. She's going to think like, is this now, isn't this funny though? Like I'm sure you make people nervous when you go into their houses and they're like, oh no, the artist is coming over. We have to buy something better for
people
like.
apologize too much. I'm like, no.
I'm sure you don't walk around thinking like you don't seem like. So as soon as I saw you, I'm like, oh, she's probably not that judgmental. Kyle.
Thank you. I appreciate that. No, I'm not. I don't think I am, but I'm glad you received that once you met me. But yeah, no, I mean, you have a lot of cool art here. I already said that to you. You have some really beautiful stuff. So,
well, but this is, I wonder if people do this to priests too. Like, oh no, the priest, he's probably wondering when the last time I went to confession, or wondering the last thing I said in confession. Like, well, I'm not doing that either. And like this, when you're,
does he think I'm a good Catholic or no?
Right, exactly. Yeah. No, but yeah, that is something, I don't know if it says something more about my own insecurity about my tastes. But what is, I don't know, is there a certain like a right or wrong taste in art? Like, is there certain things like there's certain things like, I don't know, I just like that. I remember T.S. Eliot says this about poetry. He says you should read old poetry so you can learn what good poetry sounds like. It's like you can learn it's like this, because this has been around forever and everybody has said that it's good. broadly speaking. He's like, this helps form you. But
Right.
you also need to read new poetry so you can kind of develop your own taste and say, ooh, I like this, I don't like this, and I don't know why. And that's okay.
Yeah. I think a big thing to lean into is, looking into our past, the masters, and what has lasted over the centuries. Because that's telling us something.
Yeah.
Where our culture today is really, there's a lot of pop music, I don't know about pop poetry, you might know better than me, but even trendy visual arts, there's a lot of things that become trendy, and it can be easy to quickly want to have something, and they're catchy. Like the pop music is very catchy, but most of that is not going to last for centuries.
Yeah.
Most of that is going to fade rather quickly. And they have their purpose of entertainment, but as far as art goes, and something that's going to remain to speak to generations to come, like we need to look at some of our past to be able to acquire a awareness of what it takes to have something that lasts so long. Why do they last so long? What strikes people's hearts for years and years? And especially if you are an artist yourself, to lean into that too and ask how to do that in your own work. Because again, pop has its place of just entertainment. But for me, I would love to create something that people will see when I'm long and gone, and that will still bring hearts to the Lord. So it's interesting to think about that. And I think it just takes time to be soaked in it, to learn from those that have walked this life previously, and what have they already learned. And yes, we then take that and begin to mold it and into our culture today, and how can it be relevant today. But they've already figured a lot out that we can take with us, right? Sometimes our modern culture is afraid of the past and thinks it's just boring, and to do new means to reject the whole past. And I think there's a big error in that. I think we need to bring the past in a new way.
Yeah, I've thought about this in music before. When you have good sacred music that's appropriate for the liturgy, there's a certain timelessness to it.
Yeah.
It's not that this hymn is good because it's old. It's good because you can't tell how old it is. A hymn is bad and inappropriate, or at least inappropriate for the liturgy, if I can tell that it's from the 1970s or the 1950s or whatever, whatever. If I can tell when it's from, it's like, I shouldn't be thinking of the 1960s right now. I should be just thinking of, so when you have a hymn that's like, that could have been written 100 years ago, 500 years ago. I have no idea. And it doesn't matter. There's a timelessness to it. And I think it's a similar thing to, visual arts. Like if I can tell when there's like, oh yeah, that was the fad back in, that time.
Right. Especially when we're doing something that is supposed to be in liturgy, the sacred aspect. We need that timelessness to be present. Yeah. Because we're supposed to recognize that we're made for the eternal. Right. And the arts are calling us to remember that, unless it's doing a bad job, and then we're just think about the fad that happened or whatever. So that does, it's not doing its purpose. It's not serving its purpose.
Right. So this would get us into the transcendentals, right? And so how would you describe that to somebody who's never heard that word before? Because I would talk about like the liturgy is transcendent.
Yes.
It's meant to be something where we can walk into and be lifted up to God.
Yeah. It's beyond this life. It's something that pulls us into the divine and reminds us that we were made for the eternal. Truth, goodness, and beauty are all considered transcendentals, and they work together. Like you can't separate them. If you do, you're liable to error in some sense. And Pope Benedict speaks about this. Like if you remove beauty from truth, truth is liable to error, which is a big thing to say, and good for us to really chew on, because sometimes we're afraid of beauty today, or we may not recognize its value and think it's just an extra, it's just decoration. And that's not true. It's one of the transcendentals, meaning it's an attribute of who God is. So when everything else will fade away, this truth, goodness, and beauty remain. And that's a powerful thing to just let that sink in. It doesn't end because it's God himself, the fullness of it, right? We have bits of it here in this life, and man creates certain things, but the fullness of beauty that it's all a part of will not end because it's God himself.
Oh yeah. No, and I'm just sitting with what you just said. Like we can think that beauty what did you say? It's not important.
Yeah,
Or
right.
It's like,
we forget that it has a really important value in our own lives and for all eternity.
yeah, this reminds me of something. I had a friend who he's kind of does liturgical architecture and remodeling and things like this, and he was working on an adoration chapel and showed the design to somebody faithful person who said, yeah, we don't need all that beauty because we have faith. And then like in his mind, it's like for whatever, it's like, no, if you have faith, you don't need any flourish anymore. And I would agree in one sense. I mean, like you go into like, the Cistercians, I think, they're like very bare bone,
more simple
chapels, it's like crucifix and a painting of Mary. Like, okay. But I don't think it's because they're adverse to beauty.
Right. There's a different goal there.
Yeah. But I think it's like,
and also they're called to that. There's a
right. Yeah.
Not everyone's called to that simplistic stripping down. Like that's a special calling. Right.
So this guy's thing was kind of like, I don't know. It was like more like this fear, or like, no, that's excessive, and we shouldn't be, we shouldn't be lavish with our, I don't know. It was weird.
I almost wonder if he's referring to like sensationalism, which in that vein I would agree with him. Like sometimes we get attached to consolations of the faith and all these experiences of our feelings. And the Lord will give them to us at times, but they're not who he is. He's not a feeling. So if this man you're referring to is attaching feelings to beauty, I can see the confusion there. Like, yes, we can have a response, but the beauty will speak to us even aside from feelings, and it's something beyond you and I.
Yeah.
And there's an objective value. Yes, we have subjective experiences, but it's objectively good. If God is beauty, we need it. Yeah. And that doesn't mean we always need an emotional high. That's a difference, though. And that might be what he's trying to say, and not recognizing how he's kind of separating it incorrectly.
Yeah, and I don't know. I mean, I was removed from the conversation. But this reminds me of something. I just heard a clip of Pope Leo before he was Pope Leo, saying he was talking about the liturgy, and then I think he was citing Tertullian, early church father, who was also saying that the liturgy is there's a beauty in the liturgy that leads to mystery, but it's not a spectacle. And so spectacle is pop music and pop art and pop, like let's move the emotions, let's rouse the passions. Yeah. And then it kind of stays shallow. Yeah. Whereas you take the spectacle away, and I mean there's a similarity, like there's a blur, but the spectacle is not the beauty, and the beauty leaves room for mystery. It draws us and does something different.
Well, the aesthetic leads us into the metaphysical. The aesthetic, so what we experience in our senses, is supposed to draw us, in terms of sacred art here, it's supposed to draw us into the metaphysical, the realm that's beyond us, but it's here at the same time, right? It's something that we can't fully experience as humans, or we don't know how much it is surrounding us, but sacred art, the liturgy, sacred paintings, architectural, even the music should be helping us encounter what's beyond our senses this side of life.
Yeah. And that's very much, we talk about this more in like icons, right? It's a window.
Sure.
Do you think of, traditional painting in the same way? We don't talk about that in the Western churches often. Like, is this
in a sense, not in the same exact way. They have a very, strict sense, I don't know if I want to say rules, but guidelines of how to even create these icons, where there's a beauty in this. You don't necessarily know even who the artist is, because this is how you write the icon. They even say write the icon. So it doesn't fall into that realm, but the aspect of it supposed to being like telling us more about God is definitely should be a part of all sacred art, no matter what style you might be doing. So mine being a little more classical, influenced by Florence because I got to study there, and the Renaissance era, shows the human figure a little more clearly than an icon. It's more leaning towards realism, if you will, but it still should be speaking of the divine. There still should be an otherness to it. Like if I make it too I don't know, quote unquote human, it pulls us too much into this feeling state of this realm of our humanness. And it kind of needs to walk the line of like relatability, but you experience other. It's hard to put into words. Like, I know so many people that have walked into beautiful churches that have converted because of, wow, like they experienced the other. What does that mean? Like, you think about heaven, you think about there's something more to this life than what I see.
Have you ever met Liz Lev?
Yeah.
She converted by staring at the Sistine Chapel ceiling.
Amen. I know a lot of stories like that. Yeah. Beauty. It brings truth to us. It brings goodness to us. It's a vessel where we can receive them better.
Yeah, and I would say, so like getting back to, that difference between, spectacle, which kind of rouses the passions, and beauty, which draws us into mystery. I think that's a huge difference.
Yes.
And, spectacle, I think it can only last so long. Like if you're watching the 4th of July fireworks,
right,
and it went on for like 5 hours, you'd be like, okay.
Right. You leave kind of depleted.
Right. Even if it goes on for like 45 minutes, quite frankly, I'm like, okay,
long,
I'm done, But like, I think something truly beauty, I can come back to it again and again. I think of the Mass. I mean, I say Mass every single day, and it's 90% of it is exactly the same every single day. It's the same prayers with minor variations. The readings are the only thing that's different. But every single day I can go back and go back and go back and go back and go back, and there's a beauty that just keeps drawing you deeper and deeper and deeper in. Right?
Which is the Trinitarian love. Like, we can't really fully fathom this love, but I was reading, I'm going to forget the name of it now, but it was a book about beauty, and it talked about that Trinitarian love and how they keep circling deeper and deeper and deeper in love. Wonder and beauty and order, all together, they go deeper and deeper. It's never boring. Like, we can't fully understand that as humans, so we're being invited into that. And any type of beauty that, speaking of the Lord, is inviting us into this side of life, into that continuation of love. And it's just going to be new and new, but not new in the sense of, like you're saying, a spectacle. Like, it's hard to, there's mystery here. That's why it's hard to put it all into words, but new in the sense of continual wonder and awe of what's being unfolded. And they themselves, the Trinity, Father, Son, Holy Spirit, keep entering into that together. Yeah.
So do you think that, most Catholics, do we not know this? Like, art, beauty, though we're talking about, do we not know this? Do we not know how to do it? Or do we kind of instinctively know it, but we're kind of like afraid to go there?
From my experience, because I'm graced to be able to travel around quite a bit and bring my art all over the States with my husband. We meet a lot of folks, and for the majority of the time, I see people just not knowing that they needed it. There are some that did know and have forgotten, so it like reawakens them. I think a lot of it has to do with our culture. There's a lot of perversion out there. There's a lot of twisted beauty, contorted versions, because the devil hates real beauty and wants to give us the counterfeit. So we've been soaked with the counterfeit. So then there can be a fear, of course, because we see counterfeits everywhere. Things like pornography is a prime example, is a contortion. But those of us that are in the faith might then be afraid of the body instead of realizing, no, there's beauty there. We don't want to throw the whole thing out, meaning we don't want to think body bad now just because pornography exists, right? Of course, pornography needs to be gone, but the body is good. And how do we view it rightly now? That's a journey, right? But there's an unfolding to come back to what God has intended to be. That needs to happen. So I think, though, because of the perversions, that is just one example. There are many out there. We are in a state of either fearing beauty, or if we are involved in it, we might be in the contorted versions, and we're kind of which realm do we walk in? And the Lord's calling us to be in the middle, into that realm of like the mystic, if you will, where we see his original intention for it all, where it's not twisted, but it's not something to be afraid of at all.
Yeah. Roger Scruton's got this book on beauty, and he's got an amazing section on pornography, and maybe he was Anglican. I don't know. I don't know if
he's not Catholic, but he says some great stuff.
But I was like, has he read the theology of the body? I mean, it's
wonder.
like how he's talking about pornography. The difference between pornography and art is like, you might as well be reading Love and Responsibility. I mean, it's John Paul II. I mean, so I mean, he may have. I mean, they definitely overlapped. But he had this really, really profound understanding of, the pornography. It's leaving out the soul.
Yeah, it's focusing on parts, and the essence of who that person is gone.
Yeah. I remember Christopher West, of course, spoke beautifully and continues to speak beautifully about the theology of the body. And in his own personal testimony, he shares like just kind of all these images coming to his mind of past pornographic experiences. And at the end, he sees Our Lady breastfeeding the Christ child. And for him, this was like, this is actually the true beauty. And I've experienced this personally and walked with other men who have experienced this as well, where because of like past pornographic wounds, there's like this fear to look at the beauty, it's like, no, that's actually the most beautiful thing. Like that's true womanhood. That's true, like that's the body. That's, it's so good.
Evil one wants to warp it. He doesn't want us to know Christ and his love for us. So he has fed us all the lies. So then boom, when you experience the realness, he's bombarding us with all the ugly lies that we've experienced.
Yeah.
And we do need healing from that. And there's a lot of things you can do with counseling and different things, help guard yourself from any other attacks. But sacred art, I'd like to bring into this discussion of how healing can even happen. When I was in Italy, people would come and visit our school just to see it and ask questions. And there was this group, and this really struck me. They would ask, they were from America, but I was one of the few American students there. So I got to chat with them and just to see how they enjoyed Italy. And I forget how we even got on the topic, but we got on the topic of nudes and how they're everywhere in Italy, even in the churches. And one of the girls there was so vulnerable, and she shared how she had previously struggled with pornography. And I asked her, well, what is it like for you guys here and seeing sacred art even with nudes in it? And she said, actually, it's really healing to be able to see the body in the right way again after so many years of seeing it in the perverted, contorted version.
Yeah.
And that's something to really think about. Now, is that the only thing we should be doing? No, that's not what I'm saying. But we do need to see what's good, true, and beautiful. We need to see it rightly. So like Our Lady breastfeeding, like we need to step back and allow ourselves to receive that. It's actually going to be healing. In the beginning, we might be afraid of it.
Right.
We might be. But it's good for us. And the Lord wants to, if you will, chip away all the lies that we've been fed so that we can see rightly again.
I had this meditation while I was on a spiritual, a directed silent retreat, 8-day silent retreat, everyday spiritual direction, And it was one of the meditations I was supposed to be doing was on the birth of Christ, and so there's Mama Mary and Joseph and Jesus in the cave, and then Mama Mary goes to breastfeed Jesus, and like in my meditation I'm getting like really flustered and like like I can't watch this, and so I bring that to my spiritual director after, and he's like why not, like I don't know, like there's just this like shame there or whatever, and he's like, okay, so you got to go back to that meditation and like you have to watch Mary breastfeed, and it's like, really? And he's like, yeah, you have to go there. And, and maybe even invited me. He said like, well, ask Mama Mary what she thinks about it, And when I was able to do that and she's like, Kyle, I'm not worried about you lusting after me. And I was like, whoa, like there's this fear of like going to a place that seems similar to spectacle, right? It seems similar to pornography, but it's not. And unless I'm gonna get away from this fear of something else, I'm not gonna experience the mystery in the truth, in the beauty. Right.
And that's exactly what the evil one wants. He wanted to derail you so you wouldn't go there.
Yeah.
And I'm glad your spiritual director encouraged you to actually go there.
Yeah, exactly.
Because there's so much there, so much that God has in store for us in these moments that sadly we let the evil one steal away if we listen to him.
Yeah. No, so I do think, there can be definitely a fear. But I think also like, I don't know, how do we do this? So I was mentioned in a recent podcast with Ellen that the last time I was at St. Peter's Basilica, I went and stood in front of the Pietà for an hour.
Yeah, I love it.
On several occasions, just like
that's a great challenge to be still in front of one work of art
for an hour.
Yeah,
because I mean, like something like that. I mean, and I would say it may be the most beautiful sculpture in the universe. I might say that.
It is a good one. It is up there. I would agree.
So, but like. The longer you stare at it, the more things you notice about it, and the more beautiful it becomes, and the deeper you get drawn into it, and you start noticing, oh wait, was she making that face a little bit ago, and was her hand doing that a little bit ago? You know, it almost comes to life. You know, but what I mentioned, what I noticed is like other people just take a selfie and keep moving, and it's like I wonder if they're afraid to experience it, or they just don't know how.
We don't know how. And this is a big part of our mission is we do a presentation on the value of the beauty, but then we go into actual Visio Divina, which is, it's basically what you're describing, Father, is being still in front of beauty and letting it speak to us, because God has something to say to us through that. But that takes stillness. That takes choosing to just be there and receive, to not like try so hard to like figure it out per se, but like just let it speak to us. And I don't think a lot of us know how to be still. That's the biggest thing.
Yeah.
We're in a very busy culture and bombarded by social media and things like that make us have less and less of an attention span, really, if we're being honest. Yeah. So it's kind of, I like to say, if anyone are runners out there, they know this feeling where in the beginning it's kind of horrible and you got to get past that wall. But once you pass that wall, you're like, all right, I got it. And you're running and it's good. Prayer but even just being with beauty, you kind of have that in the beginning, but you have to choose. There's an act of will to like, no, stay and let it speak to me. Just wait.
Yeah.
And in that, there's a vulnerability, right? You're opening up your heart, and God works, and you may not always have the words to describe what you experience, but he's going to move in your heart. And I challenged myself to do that in Italy quite a bit. They have free museum days, and when I lived there, I would go. And the same thing, I mean, museums are filled with art, so some of the reason might be they just don't want to miss anything. But if you have the ability to just be still in front of one, do it. It's so impactful.
You got to, if you go to Italy, you just got to kind of limit yourself. And, you know, when I went to the Borghese, I was like, forget everything else. I'm going to see Bernini. That's it. And I would go to the Bernini statues and spend like 20, 30 minutes if I could in front of them. Yeah. But we just, as soon as they let us in, I went all the way down to the ground floor, so get there before all the crowds do. But you can't, otherwise and maybe that's how museums teach us to look at art badly, because
I don't think it's the best place for them. For it's particularly sacred. I don't think.
No. I'm
glad people are experiencing sacred art there in one vein, but it's not where it should be. We need a space to like pray with it and be still with it.
Yeah. Did you ever see the movie Ferris Bueller's Day Off?
A long time ago.
Yeah, so there's this scene in it where he's, one of the things he's doing on his day off, he goes to the museum and he just sits in front of that one painting for a long, long time. And I remember seeing that when I was a kid and being like, that's so weird. Why would anybody do that?
Yeah.
But that's why, because it's more beautiful the longer you sit. Even non-sacred art, I mean, there's still something transcendental about it. There's still beauty there that can draw you into the human person or whatever you're
Even in sitting in front of a sunset and challenge yourself, there's something there. There's beauty there that the Lord's speaking to us through. Yeah.
Yeah, totally. I think that's we just don't know how to view it. We don't know how to do art. We don't know how to allow it to.
Well, we're uncomfortable with being in that ache. I like to remind people there's an ache that does happen when we encounter beauty.
Yeah.
And we run from it.
Yeah.
So we either try to just take the selfie and move on, or I don't know what our brain responds. Every individual might have something different, but there is an ache that happens because it's saying there's more than this life. And we yearn for it. Like that ache is there. God has given us that ache, and beauty often like unveils it and reminds us that it exists still. And it doesn't feel good all the time. So like if you think about your encounters with beauty, there's like a joy there, but there's also a sadness. And we shouldn't fear that sadness, but we should recognize that it's telling us there's going to be eternal beauty that will not end. And there should be a hope then that follows. But that requires us leaning into the ache to get to that place of hope.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that's good. I was just recalling a movie that made me sad, and it wasn't like a sad movie, but it's like there's parts of it like, oh, that made me sad. But there's some that like it's good. I liked it. I liked the film. I liked the way. Well, here's another. I think that we live in a culture where everything has to be understood. We have to figure everything out. And so if I'm looking at, well, what's that mean? And what's that mean? And what's that mean? It's like, well, it's not first to mean something. It's first to just be. And I don't know if you read Flannery O'Connor at all.
A little bit, yes.
So she would get people writing her letters from like, their prestigious, writing schools. And they'd be like, no, in this story, what did it mean that he had a black hat? And she'd be like, well, I find that most gentlemen wear hats, and black seemed like a reasonable color.
I'll get that with my art sometimes.
Yeah.
So, a lot of it has symbology behind it, but there are some things, well, just an aesthetic choice.
Right.
Just there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I do it in my writing too. Like, it's fun. Like, I love to, little subliminal things that if nobody picks up on it, none worse for the wear. But if you do, it's like this little bonus. Like, oh, I saw that. Like, you used this here and then you used it back here. That's good. But yeah, I mean, at the end of the day, it's like, well, I was painting something. And like, well, why does he have? He's like, because that's just what came to me.
But here's the thing with this, Father, that I would like to encourage people. Sometimes, and I say this to people, they might receive something that I didn't intend.
Yeah.
And there's good there because God might be saying something to them. So that black hat might have spoken to that person, even though Flannery O'Connor had no intention behind it.
Right.
God did, maybe, and it's okay to receive that still.
Yeah, but that's different than like dissecting it and figuring it out.
Right,
that's
I agree.
letting it work on you.
But
like,
I think the difference is to let it be like, well, maybe God's just speaking to me versus, well, I better figure it out. They're avoiding the vulnerability again. Like, what is it supposed to be? So I don't lean into whatever God might be saying to my own heart. You know what I mean? Like, it's like I need to know so that I feel safe. This false sense of safe, if you will.
No, I think that's right. But yeah, because I'm in control. Like, well, I think that means that, and I figured that out. And it's like, no, just let it work itself on you. What's it telling you about you, actually?
Yeah.
What's it saying about you and your relationship with divine?
Yeah.
Well, now you got something, right?
Amen. Yeah, truly. It's hard for all of us to be in that uncomfortable unknown, but this is very good. It's stretching our hearts.
Have you ever had a piece of art that maybe you painted or maybe you saw that, like, you looked at it and it made you feel uncomfortable? Like it felt like it was looking into you or something?
Yeah, great question. I've had works where I feel like they're staring back. The one image of Yeshua, Christ the King, that I painted. It was hard to paint because I felt like he was staring at me. And it almost made me feel like extra challenged, like, Lord, I got to get your face right. But I needed to lean into that too, because I'm not a perfect artist. And it was good to realize, like, I can only go so far. And then the Lord, like St. Faustina talks about how when she has the image painted by that artist and she's disappointed in it. And she's like, Jesus is so much more beautiful.
Yeah.
And I can only imagine being that artist, like, right. But he says to her, like, it's not in the brushstrokes and the colors even, it's in my grace. So I remind myself, I remember in that moment thinking as I painted it, like, okay, I'll do the best that I can, Lord. And you know what I have. This is all I have. But it's you. You're the grace. And there was like for me as an artist, that was an experience where it was a wrestling, if you will, back and forth as I saw him come to life and paint his eyes and his face, so his hands and his feet. So that's what comes to my mind when you ask that question.
Yeah. I mean, I think that's like, if we do encounter that sort of thing, and I remember having an encounter with this in a chapel where there was a Jesus who was staring at me, where I thought he was staring at me, so I was trying to avoid his eyes. And then later I felt like in prayer that Jesus was saying, no, I want you to go and look at that. And so I went and looked at it, but then he wasn't actually looking at me. He was looking off. And so I moved in the chapel, and I felt like an idiot because I'm like, we're in silent retreat, and I move over to this side of the chapel, and he's still not looking at me because he's not looking at, so I'm like, well, what the heck? Now you're not going to look at me, Lord?
So you thought he was, but he wasn't.
Right. So, but I think like if we find ourselves feeling uncomfortable in front of, like, that's probably a good place to stay. Like, okay, because I think probably the Lord wants to tell us something in that.
Well, why? I always like to ask the question, why?
Yeah.
Or what do you want to say? Like,
Yeah.
why do I feel this way? And what do you want to say? And wait to hear an answer. And it
Yeah.
will come. It may not be right away, but he's going to unfold what he wants to share with you about your own heart and then what he's speaking to you. And yeah, it's good. Uncomfortableness isn't bad. It doesn't feel good. That's true. But it doesn't automatically mean that that's bad because it doesn't feel good.
Right. Yeah. 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 There's growth there. I mean, it's like when, as a writer, I wrote one play, and I write, they're kind of lighthearted, but they have deeper themes. And I had people coming up to me like, oh, that made me feel really uncomfortable because I saw myself in that character. I'm like, good. I saw myself in several of the characters too. Mm-hmm. Yeah, I didn't like that either, but helps remind me that I'm not perfect, and I need grace.
Yes. Yeah, it's true.
Yeah. So you were sharing. I caught a little bit of your talk with the kids, and just sharing a little bit of your vocation as an artist. Mm-hmm. And why don't you just say a little bit about that, because I think that it's just a beautiful story, and I think there's similarities with even in my own story. I think of like, wow, that's being a Catholic artist. I mean, Flannery O'Connor, for instance, said, people ask me how I can write the way that I write as a Catholic. And she says, because I'm a Catholic, I have to write the way that I write. I have to seek excellence. I have to seek beauty,
Yeah.
But I think, again, maybe it's this fear, maybe it's this ignorance of like, we don't know how to combine the two. Mm-hmm. And so if somebody feels compelled towards the arts, but they're a Catholic, there just seems to be this necessary divide.
Well, culture tells us it's a necessary divide.
Right.
Yeah. And that's what I listened to for years. And I knew I loved creating art and just beauty in general. I was always just in awe. And I also had some beautiful encounters with God, and I loved speaking about him and just being involved with youth group and different ministries and eventually some mission trips. And the world told me that they don't belong together. The art world says, religious art and traditional art is dead and old, right? It's just something that happens in the Renaissance day. And you see this going down the modern section in art galleries time and time again, where it's just shock value now. It's urinals being signed, bananas taped to canvases, or if there's any faith, it's a perversion of it.
Right.
So the messages that I was receiving was, you can't do that today. If you did, you'll be poo-pooed on it. So I didn't know what to do. Eventually, as I'm discerning college during that time in my life, I went to do fashion design thinking, okay, well, how can I at least do art and survive financially speaking? And
right.
So I went down that route and just think, well, how can I bring my faith into it? Maybe I'll make a modest clothing line or something like that. Okay. I started out, quickly learned that wasn't for me. It's a very cutthroat industry. And I didn't love it as much as I thought and needed to, and to withstand that type of industry. So I shifted and I said, okay, how can I help people but still use art? I ended up going down the path of art therapy now, which is counseling with art. Beautiful field. Many people might be called to that. It's a way of just communicating and receiving from your client more just through creating. I learned that wasn't for me still, though. And you have to get like your master's, so could acquire quite a bit of debt. And, I wasn't convicted yet, so I kept deferring schools that I got accepted to, really good schools. And I was like, it's still not it. And I don't want to be spending that much money if I'm not convicted of it yet. So I kind of took some time off, if you will, and did mission work in the States, overseas, and just kept doing art on the side, and just felt like they still didn't belong together. And I kept asking, like, Lord, when can I do this together? When can it be together? And I also do contemporary and ballet. And I was with a dance company at the time where we performed in Florence, Italy. We had the opportunity to go over there. And I discovered a school, and they were teaching sacred art. And I was like, what? You could do this today?
Oh, no.
So I really it just struck my heart, lit a light bulb, and I'm like, okay, God, actually, I yearn to do this, and I didn't know I was allowed to do that. And finally, I had the opportunity. God just made it happen. If God wills something, it will happen. We may not know how, and there's a long story of how that even unfolded, but eventually I got to go, and I was there for the 2-year program at the time, and I studied oil painting under the umbrella of sacred art. And finally, it felt like things zipped together more clearly. And my particular calling has like the other arm, if you will, to go out and speak with it as well, to bring it in front of many people, not just to stay in my studio, and to share beauty with my husband now too, and just give people these encounters to help remind them of its great need in their own hearts and our church as a whole. So it was a process to get to where I am today. And then I honestly think it still unfolds as we continue on in our vocations, but it wasn't clear right away. And our world tries to remove faith from everything, really, but even from the arts.
Yeah, and I think that's a great shame of the modern age that the arts have been kind of hijacked, and this is something that's been close to my heart as well. That no, you go to Rome, you go to anywhere in Italy, and like, what are all the great things that you're looking at? Stuff that Catholics made, you know. The greatest.
We were like the leading artists for so long, and now we've like bowed out. I couldn't even find. This says it. I couldn't even find a Catholic college that had art as a major. That's a problem.
Yeah, that's a huge problem.
It's gotten better since I began college, but that's a problem.
Yeah. Yeah. Like the greatest architecture still standing in the world, Catholics. Greatest musical pieces in the world, Catholics. Greatest pieces of, sculpture and paintings in the world, they're all Catholics. Today, who's doing it? Well, nobody, Well, partially because, if you're going to be Catholic, you got to have a big Catholic family, and you can't support yourself doing the arts, You got to have patrons, which I think is also like, we need patrons of the art. Art has never been self-sustaining. Never. Michelangelo was not a wealthy man because he was selling all his artwork. There was patrons of the patrons, And I think we need that, but we need to remember as Catholics, like, no, we have the best we have the best subject for our art, because we have the God man, the image of God made flesh. We have and however we can put that into being, whether it's words or images or music or whatever. I mean, that's why it's been so good, and that's why there's an infinite amount of possibilities with it as well, and we should be pursuing excellence. This is always, even before I kind of, knew my own calling and, was in my faith and stuff. I was like, why is the secular music so much better than the Christian music? It's just so much better.
We talk about this all the time, my husband and I. Yeah.
It's like because that's their God, partially, like they've sold themselves to their thing, but also they're just pursuing excellence in a way that the Christian artist is not pursuing excellence, I think.
Yes, I would agree with that. I think, going down that vein, there are a lot of people in general that think you just come out of the womb a prodigy. Some people do, but that's not common.
No.
You have to invest in the talent that God has given you. And I was adamant about this. I felt called to use beauty, but I knew my skills were not there yet. So I knew I had to grow. I had awareness of beauty and understanding and some foundation, but you can grow your talent, and it's not a detriment to the arts. Like, people think like, oh, don't go to school because it'll ruin the gift that you already have. I disagree with that. Now, maybe some modern schools do ruin artistic talent in the sense they just teach you some really ridiculous things. But if you go to classical training, it's good. We need to learn the rules, if you will, to then go and create something new, but have that foundation, whatever it might be. Like, you need to know the notes of music to create a song, or you're going to just create noise. You will. The same goes for visual arts. You need to learn how to create, and then you make your artistic decision of what it means for you to create art, but you have a foundation of training. Versus a lot of individuals are afraid of that training, or just think you just don't need it. You either have the skill or you don't. And unfortunately, that's not true. And I also think it's a little sad because like I've done a lot of work to get to where I am. It's like, no, I didn't just come out of the womb like this. I had years and years of practice, and I'm still growing. And that's good for all of us to know. No matter what talent we're given, you need to grow it.
Yeah.
Like famous sports individuals have to work hard. You don't get to the Olympics without working hard.
Right.
You don't.
Right. Yeah, and that's precisely the. I think that when, like you say, you go to a certain school, and maybe there's a fear there because it seems like the performing arts in particular have been kind of hijacked, and so this is where the theater company that I started. It's a Catholic theater company, and we found that there's tons of really talented Catholic artists out there who are like, oh, thank God.
Yeah.
I've been wanting to use my gift, but I haven't felt a place that I could do it.
It is hard to feel at
reasonably,
home in the art world as Catholics.
Yeah,
in the real, like the mainstream art world, it's very uninviting to Catholics. It is.
Yeah. So I'm grateful that, there seems to be a resurgence of people making a stab at it. But then also, there's more, patrons of the art. I mean, we have to recognize that this is not.
It is growing, yeah.
Yeah, this is not something that, it's like, if we had a beautiful church, that'd be nice, but we don't need one. It's like, no, because I always think of that, like when somebody walks into the church, what are they gonna experience if they know nothing else? Well, if nobody's there and they just experience a beautiful church, well, wow, that's something. They experience the beauty.
They encountered God.
Right. If
God willingly, they receive it. And
right.
It should speak of something other.
Yeah.
They should say, wow, there's something here that I want.
Yeah. Yeah. And if the music is beautiful, transcendent, you're just like, whoa, what was that? I want that. It was drawing me into mystery. It didn't satisfy me. It drew me into something that I didn't know. I was uncomfortable. It was weird, but it was delightful.
Right.
The preaching, the liturgy, the people, I mean, all of that can have that same effect. Mm-hmm. But yeah, beauty is not, it's not superfluous.
Right. And things are growing. We have a surge of artists growing and more patrons, but we need more. Like, I'm just going to throw that out there. We need individuals that are not afraid to invest and bring it into not just homes, but in chapels and in churches. Like, if anyone's listening, I know most people who are listening are part of your community and you have a stunning church already.
Yeah.
But if anyone's listening from a church that has nothing or is quite frankly ugly, like, you have something to do about that.
Yeah.
You're called to be a part of a change. What does that look like? Maybe it's just bringing it up to your pastor and saying, hey, Father, can we bring in some art? If they don't have the funds, it's okay to like bring some families together. You may not personally be able to do one yourself, like just invest in one work of art, but we forget that we're community and we're family. So like 5 families can come together and invest in a sacred art, and boom, there you go. You have something.
Yeah.
And I say this to people often. They're like, oh yeah, I didn't think of that. We forget that we're family, and we forget that the church should be our home, and we should care about our home.
Yeah. There's one priest that I knew who he was at a really nice part of the city's, expensive, and she was commenting about something in the church, and he's kind of snarky, and he goes, you would not decorate your house the way we decorate our church. Like kind of slamming because this kind of idea, like, oh, we don't need lavish stuff and that we don't need nice stuff in the church. And it's like, you wouldn't settle for that in your house, and oftentimes we do. We settle for garbage in the church, and our houses we have nice, and we spend nice amount of money and things like this.
There's also a fear of money that we can go a whole realm, but some of that, it's important to note, is just like God provides, and you may not have one skill, but you have something else to give. Maybe it is investing in a work of art for it to be brought into church, or sharing that investment and knowing that the Lord will bless you in return. Yeah. That's key. Like anytime we give a gift, he gives us back twofold. We forget that. Yeah. We forget that. And I'm reminded of it constantly, even though we do what is really considered mission in a sense, and there's many days where we don't know where the paycheck's going to come. He still calls for us to give. And every time we do tithe and give, we see the money come back twofold and over and over, or
yeah.
more, tenfold, right? I forget what scripture exactly says, but we see it come back because God is never outdone in generosity.
Yeah.
So that we need to trust the Lord in that too.
Yeah, it's good. It's good. All right. Do you think what's the place of what's your opinion of kitsch? When I say kitsch, what
I cringe.
I know. Good. We're on the same page.
I dislike it big time.
Now, so let's define kitsch for somebody who might not know what kitsch is.
Yeah. Ugly? No.
This is here. You think of the most defining characteristic, particular thing kitsch wise you can think of. This is what I can think of. It's at a local Catholic bookstore. It's a little plaster figurine with some kids playing basketball with Jesus.
Yeah, the cheesy could be another term.
Yeah,
or the glow in the dark rosary or Mary statues.
Yeah, or like the big plastic nativity scenes.
Yeah.
You know, it's like on one hand you get it, right? It's like let's just mass produce Jesus and get him out there everywhere you possibly can. And so in one sense I'm like, okay, well that's
a good desire done wrong.
And like, yeah, but also you can't like, okay, well, so should they have like a $10,000 nativity set out on their lawn? Should everything in our house be original? Is there no place for cheap Chinese mass-produced religious art?
I think there should not be a place personally, but I'm opinionated on that. But I get it. I'm not swimming in the dough either to like always have a bunch of, I have my own work, but I don't necessarily have the ability to always buy huge originals from others either.
Right.
So I understand that predicament. I think we want things quick in our culture. That's another challenge. And it's good to wait for things. Mm-hmm. To wait. I love the journey with clients where I'm painting because they don't get their work for like 6 months because there's time to compose it. There's time to paint it. There's time for drawing. It's a journey.
Yeah.
And some people have to get on a waiting list. So it could be a couple years, right? So there's a beauty to that, though, because we have to learn how to wait on the Lord again. So even when it comes to like decorating our home, it's okay to like wait to find good things and not just like, oh, I immediately need this. Well, this is the cheapest, best thing. And maybe if you're serving it just as a placeholder until you find something better, okay. But I don't think that should remain there. And it's okay to like slowly find the good, maybe go to thrift shops. You find some treasures
Sometimes
there.
You do.
You could find affordable treasures there. And or wait to invest in an original down the road when you do have the finance. Save up for it. Like it's okay to be able to take the time to find what is better. Because the quality matters. I think a lot of the quality and themes around it try to be too sentimental.
Yeah.
That's a problem.
Yeah.
Because it pulls us more into humanity and then instead of out of ourselves.
It's a form of spectacle. I mean, Jesus playing basketball with like, oh, that's so cute. And like,
right.
No,
Does he partake in everything we do? Sure. But like we should be drawn to something higher.
Right. Yeah.
That's the purpose of sacred art.
Yeah, it's like we just drew Jesus down and like he wants to draw us up and we're maybe we
just want to keep him down.
Yeah, that's kitsch and spectacle. It's like we want to draw heaven, like we're gonna just like make it earthly. We're gonna make it very human. And he's like, well, I want to divinize you. I want to draw you up.
Well, exactly.
And you're always drawing me down. And I already came down. I did that. I did that so you could come up. Don't
exactly.
Stay down
That's
here.
the key, right? He did that, and he's drawing us back up, and we need to go through the process of coming back up. So there's a lot of good in this earth, but we're not called to stay here. We know that. So we have to let ourselves be drawn up. Yeah. And then the other side of that is just materials matter. If we're speaking about the divine, we shouldn't be, I'm in the opinion that we shouldn't have plastic and cheap materials. It does a disservice to what we're actually sharing. And now you can't always use gold and things like that, but there's good quality materials that you could use that's not plastic. And speaking about, God's not cheap. God's not ordinary. He's beyond, right? I mean, it's hard. There's like fine, like yes, he's in the ordinary, but like he's not cheap. He's so much more.
Yeah.
And we shouldn't, especially the glow in the dark. Like we need to get rid of that, please.
I have a buddy who he says every family should have at least one piece of original artwork.
I love that.
Why do you think that's important?
I think it'll help people receive beauty and learn how to like begin that at home, to begin to look at real art. And whether it's sacred art or even a different type of genre art, you're learning how to view beauty. And that's a great, you need that.
But why not just a really beautiful print?
You know that this is hard to put in words, but it's funny because I'll bring prints sometimes because if an original sells, I can no longer take it with me. And you can get some decent prints. I use G clay, which is a type of ink that is really close to the original. And they do a decent job. And if that's all you can afford, there's a good there. But when you experience an original, you know the difference right away. I don't know if I can put it in the words.
Here, here's my example.
Do you have the words?
So,
Yeah, go ahead.
I don't know. So they've the Cathedral of St. Paul has an exact laser replica of the Pietà.
Uh-huh.
And it's made out of, so they ground down marble dust and then compacted it all. It's like, it's like laser guided, exact perfect replica of the Pietà. Mm-hmm. And I can go up and I can stand like, as close as we are, I can go right up to it. Unlike the Pietà where you're, 20 feet behind, 20 feet away. And I was so excited to go see it after I got back from. I was like, oh, I can go see that one, and it just was, like part of it. It's like it has no soul.
I was just gonna say that. I do think the Lord graces the original very particularly when it comes to sacred art.
Yeah.
It's maybe the other genres.
Michelangelo didn't make this. A computer made this. A laser made this.
Well, and we might go down the route of AI and
yeah.
Yeah.
What do you think about AI?
Yeah. I think it could serve to help in things, admin work and things like that. I'm really grateful for some of its help, but as far as the arts go, I don't think it really belongs there. Not much anyways. Maybe to help like compose an idea just for like sketching and then get to the real stuff with real humans. Yeah.
Otherwise I think, we're losing the human element of everything. But yeah, so it's like if it's to know that no, this person made this thing for me, I mean, and this is why moms love their kids. Like, this is why I have on my own refrigerator, little drawings that kids from the school have made me. It's like, because there's something. This
person's hands and hours, like
it's like, that's
created that.
Precious.
Yeah.
There's love in there. There's heart in there. There's. There's something. It's human. It's human. It's not a copy. It's not a replica. It's not plaster. It's not Chinese. Mm-hmm. No offense.
Right. We have a
Chinese.
gift with being able to create prints today, but yeah, if you have the ability, or even just want to save up, an original is 10 times better. I agree. The soul is a good word to use. You're experiencing the soul of the artist, and then the depth of what they're sharing just translates even more fully than a print can. It's just facts. I don't want to discourage people from getting prints too, but there is something even more about an original.
Yeah.
Just to see the strokes up close, to see for painting purposes. But marble, you're like, yeah, that's an exact replica, but it's not the exact marble that was used.
Yeah.
It's not.
No. And I think you're right. Like I've heard this even from the philosophy of art. I don't know if you studied the philosophy of art or not. I think even Aristotle talks about it, but material matters. Something made out of marble versus something made out of plastic.
Yeah.
Like,
oh yeah.
Well, even if it's the exact same thing, and even if you took a hunk of plastic and chiseled it or something, it's like, no, it's still plastic. It's not.
It doesn't have the same value.
No.
That's what it comes down to. The value, it's cheaply made, mass produced. It's not. You can't speak about the divinity with that.
Yeah.
You shouldn't. People try.
I wonder if it's even something. I mean, even like, because art is imitation, right? Art is trying to portray something human in a different way, right?
Okay.
And so it has to have individuality, the individuality of a human, so that this is a singular piece of art, just as you're a singular human being and I'm a singular human being. And then there's something about that. Like, this does not exist in anybody else's living room, just as you don't exist anywhere else except,
Right. That is
like,
really a cool thing to think about too.
Yeah.
Like, this is the only original of whatever you have that exists.
Right.
Which gives it a lot more value. But also, thinking the humanness of it, there's a beauty of some of the imperfections that might happen. Like, I don't always get everything exactly right. And I mean, Michelangelo is really close to perfect, right? But the human will always have some error, maybe very small, that you may not even recognize. But there's a goodness there where it shows the soul, the realness of it. Whereas like AI, it's getting closer and closer to what seems to be perfect, but it's almost creepy. Because it's lacking that soul. So to see, like, I personally love when I see artists painting and you can see like what might be perceived as messed up, but it's like, no, there's like stories behind it. And what took them, like, how did they get to that place? How many layers, but even their own story behind just arriving at the finished artwork. It tells us a story.
Yeah, no, that's good. That's good. Now, I'm not saying I want everybody to go out and get original artwork instead of sending their kids to the school or tithing or something like that. But I mean, I think it's like one of those things to, I don't know, maybe it's one of those, like, should you go on a really exotic vacation or buy a piece of art? Yeah, I don't know. Maybe that's the.
Here's the other thing with original art, like, you're going to be able to pass that down for generations.
Right. Yeah.
Prints, because you know that they're lesser value, they might get thrown out.
Yeah.
Likely will just decay faster. Like, it's reality. But an original work, you're not going to get rid of because you know the value of it, and it's going to pass down and pass down and pass down. So there's a beauty to that. You're leaving like a legacy.
Yeah. Yeah, and even here in like the church, and I find stuff that's, years and years old, and some of it's, the 100-year-old equivalent of kitsch. They had a version of kitsch back then too. By the way, Saint Jose Maria Escriva has some funny. He didn't like kitsch either, and he would say it's like, they're like candy coated sugar Sacred Heart or something, But so you find stuff like it's old, but it's not original. It's still, but then you find stuff like, ooh, I think that's original, and even though it's kind of tattered and torn, we want to put that somewhere,
Yes, right.
There's something, like I found, like I have some nicer banners than these ones, but it's like, wow, real people like made those, and some of them are,
hands,
over
right.
50, 60, 70, 80 years ago, So, all right, last question, unless I think of another question. Our Lady Guadalupe.
Yes.
Have you been to the shrine,
Yes.
Guadalupe? Okay.
Mm-hmm.
It's, who painted it? I mean, did God paint it? Did Our
Lord,
Lady paint it?
But I don't think the word paint is the right word to use.
I know, but like who?
The Lord.
Right. So like, here's actually the question. I mean, you obviously like it.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. As an art, like if you went up to it and saw it and you didn't know that it was a miraculous image, how would you adjudicate it artistically? Or is that like impossible to say?
Yeah, I don't know if that's a good question, because the beauty is in what it shares.
Yeah.
Right? I mean, it is beautiful, right? But it's unfolding mysteries, and that's why it's beyond.
Yeah.
Right? Like, we don't want to. I don't know if I want to separate that.
Right. Yeah. It's probably an unfair question. I mean, I guess I say that because I think artistically there's merit to it.
Yes.
If it was just, well, and this is fascinating. I'm sure you've studied it too. My cousin was the pastor at Our Lady Guadalupe Parish, so like he's shared so much that he's learned over his years there. And one of them is that another one that proves the authenticity of it. He says there was no artist in Spain or Mexico at the time that it happened that was doing anything close to that quality or that style of art.
Yeah.
Nobody. So it's like if people say, well, it's a replica, or it's like nobody was doing art, like nobody could paint like that. Nobody could do that back then. Isn't that crazy?
Yeah. And the fact, well, it's not even touching; it's like hovering.
Yeah.
The tilma.
Yeah.
It's not even paint. So yeah, but her beauty, her subtlety. It's an icon. That style has like an iconography effect, if you will, and the symbolism behind everything. Our Lady Guadalupe has a special place in my heart in our home too. She's like, I share a little bit of that tonight.
And you can't have an original of Our Lady Guadalupe, so you have to have a replica.
Right.
So I guess
but maybe
that's the
getting it blessed
exception
will
to the rule.
Blessing our sacred art definitely helps, no matter if it's print or original.
Yeah.
Bringing the Lord's grace to it, I think that's key too.
There you go. All right. Well, last question I just thought of is, are tattoos art?
Are tattoos art?
I'm just joking. We don't have to answer that. No.
It's definitely art. Is it sacred art? No.
Good. Well, this is awesome, Kate. I'm so glad to have this conversation with you. I'm so excited to see your talk tonight, and I hope many of my parishioners will come and see it. And if they don't, hopefully they get to at least get to hear you here. And I'll post your website in the show notes, and
awesome.
So people can find you.
Yeah, I would love to connect with everyone. So
all right.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah, thank you. God bless everybody.
God bless.